Hello and welcome to FPL Mate, your best mate for fantasy Premier League content for the 2021-22 season. My name is Dan and welcome to a Gameweek 32 episode of Buy, Sell, Keep, Avoid, the video where we kind of have a look at some transfers that we could possibly make and some transfers that we could possibly not make as well. So they're both important, equally important you might say, making transfers and not making transfers. So we're going to go through all of the players today that I think we should be having on our mind in terms of transfers. If you do enjoy this video, please do leave a like on the video, it really helps out the channel, and do subscribe as well if you're new around here. But without further ado guys, let's just go through the rules of the video. So, buys are players you probably don't have but should consider bringing in. Sells are players you probably have but should consider removing. Keeps are players you might be thinking of removing but I think you should keep them. And avoids are players that are pretty hyped up right now. I think they are actually potential traps. And maybe, just maybe, there is an argument to be made to avoid these players. So that's what I'm going to be doing. 4 categories, 2 players in each category. Hopefully that will make sense. Without further ado guys, let's have a look at some buys first of all. So our first buy for this game week is James Maddison. So he seems like a super obvious buy at the moment. I think you guys will probably agree with me there. We know what he's like when he hits a bit of form, basically just an unplayable FPL machine. And he's definitely hit a bit of form, hasn't he guys? So a goal against Brentford in 30, an assist, plus a disallowed goal as well versus Manchester United on Saturday in game week 31. He just seems really on it at the moment, which is just great to see given his cheap price of 6.8 million. Now to make things better, we now know that we're going to get 3 double game weeks coming up for Leicester. We have Newcastle and Everton. That makes up the double in game week 33, so that's a really nice double game week there. But we also have Everton and Norwich in game week 36, which is an even better, even more insanely tasty looking double game week over in game week 36. So I feel like you're going to really want a Leicester attacker for these 2 particular events. That's going to be out of, Daka, Iheanacho, Vardy, except you can't pick them because they're all going to heavily rotate, particularly with Europe, which kind of just leaves us with Maddison and Barnes. And then we're also obviously going to have another double game week. That's going to be in game week 37 as well. So 3 double game weeks and 8 total fixtures within the space of 5 game weeks. That really is an insane amount of fixtures to be dealing with, guys, isn't it? It's pretty decent. So it just looks really good. Like, you look at all of these fixtures, and we spoke about similar things with Burnley, but Leicester are a better team than Burnley, so you're getting loads of fixtures in a very short period of time. What you can't really lose, to be honest, can you guys? But the problem with having so many fixtures is going to raise the question of rotation, and there is going to be a little bit of rotation. Now, Maddison is not going to play every single game. Leicester are probably going to prioritise the Europa Conference League as well in Europe. I think you kind of have to accept that when going for some of these Leicester players and just kind of take it on the chin, because ultimately Maddison, he's still going to get plenty of minutes in the Premier League, even if it isn't every single minute, and the quality of the double game week fixtures in particular will mean that even if he plays, maybe 80 minutes in one game and 30 minutes off the bench in the other, for example, even that, which would be a kind of worst case scenario, that's still going to be more than enough minutes for him to get some serious attacking returns. You'd still back him to get, double digit returns in these game weeks. So I don't really think that that occasional rotation risk is enough to put me off buying Maddison. A quick shout out to Barnes as well, who I think is definitely deserving of a mention. He's not looking quite as good as Maddison in the last couple of games on the field, just because Maddison, I feel like, has that wow factor, I guess. But if you look at Barnes' underlying stats, if you watch him play over a slightly longer period of time, over the last kind of 5 or 6 game weeks, you'll see that Barnes is just putting up phenomenal stats, and he's looking really good. But because their prices are so close between Barnes and Maddison, unless you're really desperate to save 0.2 million for whatever reason, I just think you just go for Maddison. Our next buy is Matt Doherty. I think if you're looking for a defender right now, I think Doherty just has to be the one. Spurs are kind of have been thrust back into the top 4 race. That's pretty much confirmed it for me now, that result yesterday, just how essential Spurs players are going to be from here on. They're going to be playing at full strength and full drive every single game. And when we look at defenders who can score big, we usually think of Cancelo, Robbo, Trent, Reece James. Well, we have to add Doherty into the mix now. He's absolutely crushing it at the moment. Over the past 5 game weeks, among defenders, he's number 1 for XG by a country mile, so highest XG by absolutely miles among defenders. Only Lewis Dunk has actually taken more shots in the box than Doherty, and that's all been set piece based as well, rather than open play like Doherty. He's like actually making shots in the box from open play, which is phenomenal. He's also 4th for key passes, and he's joint for big chances creative with Trent Alexander-Arnold. This is all over the past 5 games. As for expected assists, again, He is number 1 by a country mile. Now, these stats are kind of slightly skewed because Spurs have played one more game than most other teams, but Doherty isn't just competing among the best performing defenders, he's dominating among the best performing defenders. You know, he's absolutely dominating it. So to have the player with this kind of attacking pedigree, who is not only nailed on, but significantly cheaper than all of his defensive competitors, his competitors being, you know, the aforementioned premium defenders, it seems like there's no good reason to go without Doherty at the moment. It really is just looking incredible. I think we can kind of attribute this dominance of the Spurs fullbacks to kind of Conte's style of play. So Conte is a very fullback heavy manager. He wants them to be really far forward, not just crossing in, but also being at the end of the crosses coming in from the other side. And this is exactly what we're seeing from Spurs at the moment. So if Spurs can keep getting, you know, these good results, maybe get a couple of clean sheets in there as well. We've seen some clean sheets recently. There's going to be some huge scores for Doherty, isn't there? And, you know, you can still get him for under 5 million, which is just an insane bargain. It's the best value you can possibly dream of from a defender at the moment. So don't get too sidetracked by players who have double game week. You know, there's a lot of defenders who have double game weeks. I honestly think this guy is going to beat the lot of them, the double game week defenders, even in a single game week. It's really looking that good. On to some sales. We've got Felipe Coutinho to start us off. Aston Villa kind of looked pretty poor last week, and I'm not really expecting anything amazing from them here on, just because they don't really have much to play for the rest of the season. They've got 3 losses on the bounce now. They've got no chance of relegation. They've got no chance of European football anymore. I'm sure they're just looking forward to the next season now to see if they can make the next step up, which is fair enough. I'm not expecting them to roll over or anything, but long term, I can see certain players downing tools. I can see some rotation with some of their, quite frankly, class academy products, you know, maybe coming in to play a few games, and it's going to be a pretty dull end of the season for them. In the immediate term, we've got a tricky game against an informed Spurs, then we've got a blank. We could see some doubles later on in the season for Aston Villa, but for those, I'd be more tempted by kind of super cheap assets like Ramsey, you know, maybe going for a nailed on defender, possibly Watkins if he shows any promise purely because of the lack of other forward options. Coutinho, however, at his price and as a midfielder, it's just not really good enough. We know he can produce random moments of magic, particularly in the games against weaker oppositions, but right now we're seeing a plethora of cheap and mid-priced midfielders performing every game, many of which have double game weeks in 33 and more in 36. So think Barnes, Maddison, Saka, Martinelli, maybe some of the cheaper doublers like Fraser, Ward-Prowse. Then the non-33 doublers, you know, Kulusevski, Bowen, he's back playing, isn't he? All of these players are super cheap, and you'd much rather have them. And, I mean, I've not even mentioned some of the more expensive players, you know, KDB, Son, Foden, Havertz. It's just impossible to fit every midfielder that you could possibly want in one team, and even more impossible if you're holding on to players who aren't quite performing to the standard that you kind of hope for. Midfield is just the most premium real estate when it comes to your FPL players right now, and I think we need to get into that habit of being super harsh on our midfielders to make sure we're maximising getting the best players in this position, and for that reason it's got to be Coutinho out. Next out is Romain Saiss. So similarly with the fixture situation, it's not really ideal for Wolves away against Newcastle, who prior to that Spurs game actually looked pretty good. Then we've got a blank. Honestly, it kind of seems like we're at a slight downward trend if we're looking at these Wolves defensive numbers that they're putting up. It looks like maybe they're becoming not so much of the impenetrable defence that we kind of thought they were a little while ago, but perhaps more importantly, they are dealing with a little bit of rotation right now. I have kind of spoken about this before, about how Willy Bolly could come in and reduce the minutes of Kilman and Saiss, and in game week 31, that is exactly what happened. Saiss plays 0 minutes, Wolves win the game. That doesn't exactly fill me with confidence going forward for a player like Saiss, and I think it's likely that we could see a little bit more of Bolly, and that kind of spells trouble for any Wolves defender, any Wolves centre-back whose name is not Connor Cody. But even Cody, do you really want to keep him? I'm looking through the defenders available in the game right now, and there are just so many serious heavy hitters competing, you're competing with the premium midfielders for points at the moment, if we're completely honest. Now, I think we're going to start seeing a big at the back trend kind of return to FPL a little bit. Many people are shifting to either a 4-5-1 or a 5-4-1 formation. So 4 of your defenders need to be playable in most game weeks. Cancelo, Trent, Robertson, Doherty, those are the kind of guys you're talking about. Maybe Reece James. They seem to be the big ones right now. And then maybe you've got one cheapy defender too to try and enable a little bit of budget as well, so you can kind of rotate that player in and out with your 5th midfielder maybe. Wolves defenders are neither big hitters or are they budget enabling defenders. So it's kind of like, you know, which ones you go for, you know, do you really want to keep them? I don't know. It kind of begs the question overall. Is it really, do these Wolves players, well, particularly the Wolves defenders, do they really have a place in our FPL teams right now? And I don't think the answer is yes. I think the answer is no. Right, our first keep is Mo Salah. You'd have to be seriously brave to remove Mo Salah from your team. Like, seriously brave. And maybe me kind of saying he's a keep is more of a testament to my own lack of bravery. But here we are anyway. Now, I'm sure the reason most of you are thinking of keeping Salah is because of his ownership. The kind of fear that because most other players, most other FPL players, FPL managers are going to be keeping Salah and often captaining Salah, that if he does bang, you're going to be in big trouble. And that is true, but I don't think that alone is justification enough to keep him. You don't gain rank by playing fearfully, by playing with fear. The reason why a lot of people will be selling him is because of this perceived lack of form from Salah, and I kind of understand this. It is a fact that Salah is underperforming at the moment, but this is where I feel like we should keep him, because form is temporary, class is permanent. You guys have probably heard that phrase so many times before, but it's a cliche because it is true. Salah may have gone off it a little bit at the moment, but we have all of this historical data. We've watched him play enough to know that he's not suddenly going to become a bad player. Sometimes he will go a couple of games without scoring from open play or whatever. Players of this exceptional high quality will have very brief, dry spells. It happens all the time. It happens to all good players. It doesn't mean they are suddenly bad football players. And they always come back to their best. They always bounce back. So think about Son a few game weeks ago. Everyone was saying, oh, Son, he is out of form. We've got to sell him. But because he's you know, there's a genuine quality player there in Son with a long history of top performances, it doesn't take long for him to get back to those top performances. Same with Harry Kane, same to, you know, Kevin De Bruyne to a degree. Raheem Sterling, we kind of went off him. You know, if he was more nailed on, we'd probably be having a better look at Raheem Sterling, wouldn't we? Because he kind of disappeared into obscurity, but because we know he is actually genuinely a really good football player, he can come back and he can score massive points, you know, because he has that quality to do that. The point is that good players come good. And with regular football guaranteed, a hugely important end to the season, I think Salah will come good. It might be this game week. It might be next game week. We might have to wait a while, and, you know, it might be right on time to captain him in game week 36. I don't think it's going to take that long, but it's going to happen. I don't know when. It's going to happen. We're not going to see Salah not score again from open play for the rest of the season. We're going to see some more goals. We're going to see some assists. He's going to smash it. I just think as long as he keeps posting a good underlying stats, which he is, guys, you can see on screen right now, as long as he can get the you know, the odd jammy penalty goal, you know, that's fine by me. Then I think we can afford to be patient for a couple of weeks. I think selling Salah is a perfect example of a transfer that seriously ends up punishing you, and a transfer that you end up wishing that you'd never made. We see it all the time. These knee-jerk, impatient managers dumping great FPL assets due to a couple of bad scores, and then suddenly the player is scoring 10 pointers weekly again. It's going to happen with Salah. You know, that's exactly what's going to happen with Salah, and that is why you should keep him. Pretty much. Thank you for coming to my TED talk. That pretty much sums that one up. The next keep is Armando Broja. I know a lot of people are selling Broja this week looking at the stats, since, you know, he can't play against his parent club Chelsea this week. I think that's probably the main reason for that. And since he can't play anyway, you might as well sell him, right? Wrong. You can't seriously tell me that you were planning on playing Broja in this fixture anyway, and by using a transfer on Broja, you're essentially sacrificing a transfer that you can use elsewhere, and I think that's the key point here. Who are you going to transfer Broja to? Another cheap forward who's going to get you 2 points per week? The opportunity cost here is that you've sacrificed the opportunity to buy a big hitting defender or midfielder who could gain you an additional 10-point score, you know, on your weekly score. But instead, you're selling Broja and replacing him with another 2-point player. Doesn't make any sense to do that, does it? Everyone is kind of switching to one forward formations right now. Maybe 2 forward formations at an absolute push. That means you're going to have to try and get 2 cheap bench forwards, basically. That's what's going to help you do this. Go for 2 cheap bench forwards. Broja is already a cheap bench forward. There is absolutely no harm in leaving him on the bench unless you are seriously, desperately looking for a little bit of cash and want to actually downgrade Broja. But kind of when we look at the other like cheap forwards, Mateta, COUTINHO, those are probably the only exceptions where I see them as kind of cheap-ish forwards, but I would rather have them Broja right now. And even those players, I would just be leaving them on my bench anyway, for now anyway. And I'd maybe start bringing them in a little bit later on in the season for those double game weeks. But for now, they would just stay on my bench anyway. So why would I swap Broja to one of those players now when I'm not actually going to use them now? It doesn't really make sense to do that. Maybe they get injured between now and then, you know. You don't know what's going to happen. So perhaps, you know, you could keep Broja and, you know, go for a bench boost or something, or you maybe use some of these other players to go for your bench boost. Just use these cheapish forwards. But this is going to be way later. You know, if you're using Mateta or Coutinho, that's who you want to bring in now for Broja. You want to bench boost that later on. Then just bring in the player later. You don't need to think about this now. Anyway, after game week 32, we've got game week 33, where Broja has a double game week versus Arsenal and Burnley. Now, I'm not 100% sure he's going to play both, but if Southampton want to keep Broja, which they do, you know, keep him at the football club, I mean, they do have to convince the player that he's part of their plans, and that means playing him. So he is going to get minutes in that game week. Will he get returns? I'm not so sure. His underlyings aren't amazing, but they also do suggest that he is due a return. Let's see. You can kind of optionally play him in 33 if you want to. You can bench boost him in 33 if you want to. Or you can just have Broja as a kind of an okay backup who has a double game week. You know, have your main starting 11 and have Broja as your 12th man. It's not a bad 12th man to have, really. Either way, right now, I just can't see any compelling argument to sell him at this exact moment in game week 32. So I really would, guys, really strongly advise you to use your transfer on a midfielder or a defender and just stick Broja on your bench for this game week and just forget about him. And finally, some avoids. We'll start you off with Diogo Jota. Now, maybe this is a little bit controversial, given that he's just played a blinder in game week 31. You know, scoring the first goal, winning the penalty for the second. But hey, welcome to FPL Mate's Buy, Sell, Keep, Avoid series. The whole point of this video is to stick our necks on the line and try and see if we can go against the crowd and come out victorious. So let's do that. Let's carry on doing that. First of all, when Jota plays, let's be real, he is phenomenal. He's a phenomenal player to own. So I'm not trying to debate that. He is literally one of the best. In fact, I'll put him up there as one of the best players to play with in your FPL team, as long as he is playing. But I still feel like Jota kind of presents too much of a rotation risk to be a reliable FPL asset for the remainder of the season. I know Jota started in game week 31, but looking at the facts, it seems like this is probably going to be the exception rather than the rule. So Luis Diaz, who has been first choice recently for Liverpool alongside Salah and Mane, Diaz returned late from international duty in South America, so he was always unlikely to play in this game week. Then we've got Salah and Mane. They both played 120 minutes a few days before in a World Cup qualifying game, so this opened the door kind of for Jota and Firmino to start. Now, you could say maybe Jota with that performance has earned his place, and maybe he has, but could he have earned his place now in important Champions League games and FA Cup games rather than Premier League games? I don't know, because there's a lot of games for him to have earned his place in. He's not going to be, you know, he's not going to be the same front three for the rest of the season. We're not going to see no more Diaz or Firmino. It's just not going to happen. What I probably would say is that Salah, he's going to start pretty much every single game for the rest of the season. I don't know why Salah wouldn't start pretty much every single game. You know, he's Salah. We've got Mane, who's probably going to start 80% of the games across all tournaments. Jota is probably going to be fighting it out with Diaz and Firmino every single game week for that final slot in the front three. And he's probably only going to end up starting 30-40% of the remaining Premier League games, and that to me is just nowhere near enough to justify bringing him in to your FPL teams, especially when he's coming on off the bench for a lot of one-pointers as well, kind of blocking your bench players, so it's not even like you can cover him with your bench. So, yeah, it doesn't look good for Jota. He's just not going to get enough game time. I wish he did get more game time, because then he would just be a perfect FPL asset to bring into our teams, but he's not going to get those minutes. And I'm sure Liverpool fans, you're probably going to agree with me there, but I would love to know, as Liverpool fans, what you guys think. What percentage of the remaining Premier League games do you think Jota is actually going to start in? I say 30, 40, maybe you'll say something slightly different. And our final avoid is Ivan Toney. I initially wrote down Christian Eriksen as an avoid here, but I thought that was too much of a cop-out. I'm going to put my neck on the line. I'm going to stick my neck out, and I'm going to say Toney for the avoid, even though Eriksen is definitely more of an avoid than Toney. So Toney, the penalty merchant extraordinaire, has admittedly been playing quite well recently, but outside of those 3 penalty goals in his last 5, he has, you kind of leave him with, you know, a goal against Norwich and a goal against Burnley. I mean, that's still okay, but like I said, his performances have been good in a non-FPL capacity, but is it good enough where you have confidence in him versus West Ham next, versus Spurs in 34, or United in 35? He's not been doing it against the big teams. I mean, I know you could say, oh, we got an assist against Chelsea. That was a real freak result. Like, we cannot base everything on that freak result, and I don't think we can suddenly say that Brentford are a phenomenal team. They will get some results at, you know, between now and the end of the season. I don't doubt that, but we've got a really poor run of fixture here. And even in Gameweek 33, which is probably the fixture you're probably looking at thinking, well, actually, I quite like Toney for Gameweek 33. And I kind of get that, to be fair. I do kind of understand that. That is a game week where we actually have some double game weeks, you know. So I think I'd rather, you know, if we're looking at Game Week 33 and targeting players for Game Week 33, I think I'd rather take my chances on a Newcastle forward at kind of the same price, since they double. So they have a double game week, Newcastle. And speaking of doubles, Brentford aren't going to have any double game weeks for the rest of the season. I know we talk a lot about double game weeks and how we target double game week players. Toney is the opposite. He's one of the few players in the whole Premier League who, well, Brentford are one of the few teams in the whole Premier League that aren't actually going to get any more double game weeks this season. So I don't know. I kind of feel like with our transfers, we're probably going to be trying to pick a combination of big players from big teams and then sprinkling in players from smaller teams that have double game weeks. And Toney doesn't fit into either of those categories. So I really don't think he's a very progressive buy. If you already have him, I would certainly keep him, definitely up until that Watford game at least, because that's going to be pretty good for you guys. But I don't think I'd buy him. There's no harm in keeping him, but I wouldn't buy him. If you're kind of looking to move your FPL team forward, I wouldn't be bringing him in. So, to be honest, if I'm looking to move my FPL team forward, I'm just going to give up on buying forwards at this stage, honestly. It's kind of Kane or nobody in terms of forwards. The rest of them, just whatever. So in summary, guys, I think the biggest takeaway from today's video is to probably focus your attention on transferring midfielders and defenders. Those are that's where you want to kind of focus your transfers. The only way you would maybe make a forward transfer is if you're downgrading one of your forwards in order to free up some money to upgrade one of your midfielders or your defenders. There's just so many good options to pick from, and they all look like they can get you points. Forwards, just forget it. They just don't look like they're going to get points now, aside from like Harry Kane, obviously. If you need to free up funds, think about downgrading these forwards. Double game weeks have been announced, so Leicester players, they look like good targets, and Spurs, they're just on flames right now, so I think we probably need to be tripled up on Spurs at the moment as well. Quick mention of Arsenal as well. I know I haven't mentioned them today, but all of their players are keeps. Don't think that they're suddenly going to be a bad team because of one freak result. Same with Chelsea. Don't think they're bad just because of one freak results. Freak results happen sometimes in football. That's it. And the key is often to try and look beyond that and try and look at the bigger picture and see if we can focus on some longer term data. And that is pretty much it for today. Thank you so much for watching this video, guys. Please do make sure you leave a like and subscribe if you are new around here. Really appreciate that, guys. We've got 100 experts video tomorrow. We've got team selection on Thursday, and then we've got a stream or two streams on Friday. A preview stream and a deadline stream, and that's going to be this week's content, so make sure you stay tuned for that. There was a stream yesterday as well. If you want to go check out that, a strategy stream where I talk a lot about my specific strategy for going in for the rest of the season and what kind of options there are with all of the new double game weeks. That stream was last night. It's about an hour long. You might enjoy it. And that's pretty much all I've got to say for you guys today. So once again, thank you for watching, and I will see you later, mates. Bye-bye.